It's now time to move on to a panel discussion, precision medicine and development, new possibilities, and the Achilles heel of cancer. And I'm handing over to another person here, Linus Jönsson, Associate Professor at the Department of Neurobiology, Care and Society at Karolinska Institutet. And you will host the panel and you will introduce the panelists.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. So it's my great pleasure to moderate this discussion. I'm also happy to have a small but distinguished panel with me here. Viktor Dvorta from Karolinska Development, the CEO of Karolinska Development, and Daniel Ågren, who is a personalized healthcare lead at Roche. And we will talk about precision medicine. And I thought that I would, just to introduce this topic, show a couple of slides just to level set what we mean by precision medicine and opportunities in this area. So in traditional medicine, as you know, we develop medicines for groups of patients. We make sure that these medicines work on average, but we also know that there are groups of patients that have better effect of these drugs, and there are some patients who have perhaps no effect of these drugs. The problem is that we can't know which patient is which. Before we give this medicine, if it's a patient who will respond or a patient who will not respond. And even after the patients take this medicine, we may not even know then if they actually were a responder or not. Now, the idea with precision medicine is instead that we recognize that patients are different, there is heterogeneity, and we can try to identify groups within these patients, look at individual characteristics in terms of their genome, in terms of their behavior, their environmental circumstances, and also their digital phenotype. And we can then try to identify patients and develop medicine specifically for these smaller subsets of patients. Thereby we get medicines that are more targeted and hopefully then have a better effect. So that's the principle. Now, if precision medicine is the future is already here. In fact, a large share of drugs that receive FDA approval today are precision medicines in the sense that they have an indication that is based on identifying patients with a biomarker. You can see here that over 30% of approved medicines today are precision medicines, and this trend is increasing. So this has been, of course, very successful. Precision medicine, with that we mean precision diagnostics and precision treatment. This has been very successful. As you all know, we have fantastic advancements in different cancer types, not least where patients today might be cured, in fact, that previously were untreatable. And in fact, now there is a lot of interest in expanding this approach also to the area of prevention. So we're talking about precision prevention when it's about targeting groups of healthy individuals but that are at risk of developing disease. And this is sometimes referred to as precision health, so the wider area of applying precision medicine to prevention and treatment of disease. So there, of course, are also challenges with this approach. And one area I'd like to focus on here, I'm a health economist, so I'm interested in whether these drugs actually get to patients and whether they actually get reimbursement. And you can see a little bit depressing figures here that overall less than half of all new pharmaceutical products receive reimbursement and patient access in Europe. And you can see in oncology it's a little bit better than average, 55%. But if we look at orphan indications, and in particular non-orphan indications, it's much lower, and this trend is also decreasing. So not more than a third of all new medicines that achieve regulatory approval. Remember that these are drugs that are approved by the EMA, but they are not being used by patients because they don't have reimbursement. So one way to interpret this is that the reason why we have been successful in developing precision medicines is that the regulatory requirements are a little bit lower. We can achieve regulatory approval with less developed data, smaller trials, shorter trials, uncontrolled trials. But this data has not been enough to convince payers to actually pay for these drugs, and therefore we get stuck at that stage. So this is a little bit where we are to set the stage, and with that I'd like to move to the discussion. And I'm happy to have, again, Daniel Ågren, personalized healthcare lead at Roche. If I can begin with you, could you tell us a bit how you view this area at Roche? What priorities do you see, and how do you make decisions about investments in this area?
Yeah, but precision medicine is really a key area for for Roche, and that comes back to our vision that in 2030 we want to deliver 3 to 5 times more patient benefit to 50% less cost to society. And to be able to do that, we believe that we need to implement precision medicine in the healthcare system. And as you all know, Roche is a huge life science company with both a diagnostic leg and a pharmaceutical leg. And we believe that we can, by combining those competences and working together, we can really help in the implementation of precision medicine. And if you think about the investments and we're doing within precision medicine, we're doing a lot within diagnostics, we're doing a lot within the treatments, and that's how we've been working for many years. But now we're also starting to focus on the glue between them, so the bridge between diagnostics and treatments, and that is one of the key things that needs to happen if we should implement precision medicine, because the diagnostic tools are becoming more and more advanced. We're getting more and more information from the diagnostic tools, but they need to be interpreted so that the clinicians can get actionable insights. And that's something we are doing a lot within. And we did a large investment a few years ago in Foundation Medicine in US, and that's a company that is doing advanced diagnostic, but also transitioning the information into actionable insights. And that's a good example of where Roche is doing investments, and I think that investment was in the range of 55 billion Swedish crowns. So it's huge investments, but it's taking the whole patient journey into the actionable insights. So that's one area that we are focusing on.
Super, thank you. I will come back to you again, Daniel, but I'd like to also ask Victor Rotas, so you're the CEO of Karolinska Development, just ask you the same questions. How do you view the area of precision medicine when you make your decisions about investment? How do you view this area and the development? What are the most opportune areas?
So, I mean, there are various fields here that you can look at, and one of them is of course, medtech is one part where it's quite actionable, actually. We have one portfolio company, Ostesign, which makes personalized cranial implants. So you take an MR, and then you see exactly how that implant should look, and then you manufacture the implant specified for just that patient. So that is a type of personalized medicine. So within orthopedics and so forth, we see all of that. And that's feasible for us to invest in. But when you come to pharma, it's much tougher, because diagnostics is a tough field to invest in. And many of the small companies, they don't have the bandwidth for both doing the diagnostic part and the pharma part. You don't have, how much was it? 55 billion? I mean, we have significantly less money to develop these kind of companies, which means that you have to focus on one thing, and you have to focus on the thing that gives you money, which is usually the pharma part. So, you know, we rarely see both the diagnostic part and the pharma part in one company. That said, we have a company in portfolio called Aktier, which is a P53 company. I mean, it's an oncology company targeting P53 mutations in cancer, in various cancer forms. So, yes, it is possible. It's quite rare. I think what we could see is something like enzyme replacement therapy, where you have inherited disease, and you know where is the mutation, what kind of enzyme is mutated, and you can replace that. That's sort of an obvious one, and it's also personalized medicine. One thing we also find problematic is when companies come to us with these kind of things, it's also, all right, so how validated is your marker, and how much money should we spend on validating your marker? Is that an impossible mission? I mean, if they come to us with cardiovascular disease and say, well, we have this fantastic marker for myocardial infarction, very good. It's like 5 years trials to prove that this marker actually is reliable. And, you know, and can you get paid for that? Probably not. And can you tag along a medicine, right? Maybe, but, you know, so it's a difficult field for small companies.
So when you're looking at companies that have wide indications that are targeted versus smaller indications, I mean, could you say something in general about what you prefer? Is that going back to, well, if you have a very defined smaller indication and you have a validated biomarker, is that what you will be looking for?
Yeah, that's fantastic, especially if it's orphan and a validated biomarker. That's my dream company. Come and show it to me if you have one. But I mean, they are rare. So I think, yes, that's obvious. And orphan, of course, I mean, if you both have a validated biomarker and orphan, the drug development is less costly and much faster.
Daniel, do you agree in terms of what your priorities are? Are there specific types of products or portfolios like that, or disease areas that you think are more interesting?
No, but I think the oncology is, of course, interesting for Roche. That's an area we've been focusing a lot over the past years, and moving into the smaller indications is something that is really the future of cancer care, because many of the biggest areas and biggest indications, there are treatments already today, but now we see that we're moving more into the more rare cancers, and there you need to have targeted therapies, and you need to have a biomarker available to get the treatments in there. So that's an area where a lot of things are happening now.
Yeah, and you have the muscle to develop that yourself as well. Do you see the tandem track of both developing the biomarkers and the pharmaceutical products in tandem?
Within cancer, we see that we are moving more into broader panels, so that you test a lot of biomarkers in one panel at one go. We believe that that is the future, moving away from the single marker test. So getting everything at one shot. It's much more efficient, and it's much more feasible both for the future drug development, because then you get the targets. You see what patients have those markers already, and they can be included in clinical trials, but you also get the biomarkers where there are treatments available already today. So the panel thinking is the future.
Okay, so if you think about one of the first or an early targeted therapy or precision medicine was Herceptin, or trastuzumab, is a Roche product actually, that targets specifically patients with a HER2 mutation, right? So or positivity. So that's one biomarker that identifies this patient group. Now, I think what you are talking about here for the future is that we will not have one biomarker. We will in fact have a large collection of biomarkers and perhaps also other type of data that will together define your patient population. Is that right? It will be more complex in a way how we identify these patients.
Exactly, that's what I think that will be the future. So nowadays we do, for instance, with broad genomic profiling, which is using the technique that Deviser was talking about earlier today. There you actually get, like, you can get 300 to 500 biomarkers in one go, and then you can, but then you need, it's complex information. That's why it needs to be interpreted to create these actionable insights for the clinicians. So that is the transition that is happening, that is now enabling precision medicine. So
what are the regulatory barriers for that? I mean, when you have big panels and have all of these, I mean, what have you seen as the regulatory hurdles here?
No, but we have, for instance, if you look at Foundation Medicine, that is regulatory approved. It has FDA approvals for several of the biomarkers already. So it is a troublesome process, but when you have it, it's really so much more.
Big panels, or is Is it more for, I mean, one biomarker, that's an easy one, right? But if you have a big panel, 500, what do you do with that information and how do you sort it out? How do you do it actionable?
No, but they look at different parts of different biomarkers, and you get that FDA approved for a certain drug, and then you have that. But the whole process is also FDA approved, so it is standardized and structured, the whole process, and that's something that is critical to have it. So it needs to be the same result each time for this sort of tests.
Mm-hmm. And if we take one step further beyond the regulatory approval, in the end, we would like these medicines to go into the patients as well, right? In routine care. So how do you see, what type of barriers do you see of introducing these type of concepts that involve large panels of biomarkers, complex information processing, and then decision making based on that? How do you see any barriers in implementing that in routine care? I think it's a question to both of you. I mean, if you, Victor, if you consider these type of things.
And this is expensive medicine, right? So who should pay for this? And how much can it cost to cure one patient? And you have to put that in relation to all the other things that is happening in healthcare, right? I mean, these things that we are talking about, it's quite expensive treatments. First you have to have the panels and so forth, and then on top of that you have very expensive medicines. And can society afford that?
Yeah, but I would like to question. So it's but I think the medicines that we have approved here in Sweden, where we have reimbursement, they are seen as cost effective. So they are cost effective here in Sweden, and of course it's an investment cost to implement precision medicine and getting the panels in place. And that's something which I see as a big hurdle today, and there will probably be a need for some national investments to get this in place, but after that it should be this should be cost effective for the healthcare. Treating the right patient, giving them the right treatment at the right time is more cost effective than giving them the wrong treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's one aspect here which I a little bit alluded to in the introduction as well, and that's the level of evidence. I mean, again, traditional medicine is based on evaluating drugs and testing them in large populations. We have a lot of data. We know more or less how well these drugs work. Even though the effect might not be very big in an individual patient, we know a lot about it. I think one of the differences we'll have with this personalized medicine is that the expectation is that the individual effect can be really large for a patient, but we'll know less about it. I mean, would you agree with that the level of evidence that we'll have on these new drugs will actually be lower, and we're actually making these decisions on data on cost effectiveness and clinical effectiveness and so on that is not as mature? I mean, we're talking about single-arm trials and things like that. Would you agree with that, and what type of kind of solutions do you see to that problem going forward for healthcare payers?
Yeah, but that's a fact that when you go into smaller populations, there's no chance to make these huge clinical trials because it's not enough patients out there to do it. So it would take 20 years to get enough enrollment, and then you need to base you have a lower evidence grade when you come in. And that can be solved in many ways. It could be done by real-world evidence. Roche is doing a lot of investments there. We purchased a company in US a few years ago, Flatiron Health, that have a lot of real-world data from US, and that is often used both in the reimbursement process and in the other negotiations. So that's one way of doing it. The other one is to follow up what is the actual impact of the patients. It's more difficult to do, but I think that is the future. We need to know, we need to capture in healthcare what is actually happening with the patient to get the interventions, and from that you can reduce the uncertainty for the payers.
So who should be responsible for that, for following up the effect and the cost effectiveness of drugs as they're being used in routine care? Will Roche take a part of that responsibility as well, companies in the industry, or where should that responsibility lie, do you think?
I think it needs to be a collaboration between the payers and the regions and the companies. I don't think anyone should take the full responsibility for that. It needs to be done in collaboration. I think that is the future of doing it. And
in medtech, for example, I mean, there you have registries. I mean, you get a 510K approval on very small patient population, and then you, for the payers, you have to do all the registry and the real-world data, and also for the clinicians, because they won't buy into this, and if you don't have that. So, I mean, that's a way to go that the medtech industry has been using for several years, because, I mean, one of the reasons is that it's much easier to get approved with a medical device sometimes than it is with a drug.
Yeah, and do you see it? So the fact that this quite important part of the evidence generation process will be done in collaboration with healthcare and industry. Do you see will there be a change then in kind of how you're pricing these type of drugs? I mean, will we accept to have lower prices in situations where you have more risk that will have to be addressed with follow-up? I mean, will there be some willingness to share that kind of risk with the healthcare system? Do you think? I mean, I think that's what I'm seeing as a health economist here, is that the reason we have such low approval rate or reimbursement rates is that there's still not enough kind of acceptance that we have to adapt the prices to the level of evidence. Yes, they are cost effective at your expected value, but there is so much uncertainty that patients simply don't accept it. Where do you see that going?
No, but I think it needs to be done in collaboration, and I think reducing the uncertainty is important, and knowing how do you look at uncertainty? I think that is a key as well, and seeing like what is the value of real-world evidence versus clinical trials? How can we come to an agreement? What is the risk? And I think it will be a collaboration. It will not be it will not only be reducing prices, and it will not be only paying more. I think it needs to be a balance.
There needs to be an incitament for the pharma industry also to develop drugs in small populations. I mean, way back there was no orphan development, but now because of the prices, I mean, there's a lot of companies developing orphan drugs and so forth. So, you know, society has to pay and for the drug development somehow, but you guys can take over prices, of course, by doing innovative health economics on things that you sell.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, it was very easy to handle the higher prices and higher risk with orphans when that was a very small part of the healthcare system. Now it's becoming orphan is in fact become a very big part of the overall healthcare. But if you think about all the precision medicine, basically much of it is now within orphan indications, and of course then it becomes a big part of your budget from a healthcare system perspective. So you kind of get this need of looking at it more and more carefully. So I have to ask you, Victor, do you think about these things when you look at companies? Do you think all the way to the market and to reimbursement and these type of things, or do you still mainly view kind of the regulatory success as the main kind of goal for your projects?
No, we look at everything. I mean, we even look at the COGS and so forth, and what is a reasonable price to get for this drug when it gets out there? What is the market? How many patients is there? What are the margins that we can get? Even in preclinical stage, we have to do that. I mean, I've actually been in one small company where we, after several years, discovered that the COGS was too high. So we stopped development. We couldn't. It was impossible for us to get the price that was necessary. So I usually do mistakes only once.
So final question to both of you: do you see in the future, will we see more of precision medicine? So will we see smaller and smaller indication, more and more targeted development, or will we sometimes see a rebound? We'll say, okay, well, it's very hard to develop economics with these small indications. We have to go back to having larger, wider indications to be able to efficiently develop medicines. What do you think? What does the future look like here, Daniel?
Yeah, no, but I'm sure that we will have precision medicine, more individualized treatment, getting more information about each patient when you take the treatment decision. We need to use all information that is available about the patient when you take the treatment decision, which means that we will have much more individualized treatment in the future. And then I think we have to adopt the payment models to be suitable for that, because that's what the patient wants.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's like this, like with everything else, things are becoming cheaper. Look at sequencing. I mean, when I started in medicine, sequences was super expensive. Now it's for nothing. I mean, and I think this will go the same way. You will do these panels, and there will be some robot, doing the interpretation, and bang, and it will cost nothing. And I think that's where we are going. So I think definitely it will be cheaper, and we also find new drug development methods, and so forth and so forth. So I think absolutely this will be cheaper to develop, and in the end, then also cheaper for the payers.
So, exactly, thinking a bit about the enabling technologies, so the first kind of phase, if you will, of precision medicine was very much enabled by advances in genome sequencing, right, and the reduction of the cost of that. So if you think about the next steps, what are the technologies that will enable the actually large-scale implementation of precision medicine and be able to reduce the cost of clinical development as well, to make this whole thing affordable? Do you have any thoughts around that? What are the main kind of technological developments we need to see?
No, but I think the big data for the development side, it's definitely big data and this real-world evidence. If you can look at large patient populations where you have both genomic data and you have the outcome, and then seeing there, if there is some effect on the real-world data side, then you can continue development and pinpointing specific development projects within those areas. That would definitely reduce the costs for development and speed up the process. So I think that's an area where it will definitely make a difference.
Yeah. So you mentioned Flatiron Data. I think Roche bought that for what is 20 billion SEK. It's a data company, right? So, but hopefully that type of real-world evidence, which in fact is a public good. I mean, we should be able to access that and work with that much more freely and efficiently, right? And reduce the cost of accessing and working with that type of data. And I think we see some developments in that direction in Europe with different types of collaborations around data access. So I think that's a good point.
But also digitalization is much more easier to monitor patients. I mean, you can have everything from a ring which measures whatever to so it will be much easier to monitor patients for various things, and also in the clinical studies with all the digitalized tools, I think it will make things a lot easier and cheaper and more precise.
Yeah, but we need the healthcare system on board as well, right? I mean, they need to participate in collecting this, or can we actually trust that the patients will be the main source of information, that the patients themselves with their health monitoring?
Monitor self-movement, so yes, I think part of it could be, you could probably trust some patients, I would argue. I don't know how that's going to work in the future, but yes.
Okay, well, we're getting into the future here, and we are actually running out of time as well. With that, I think we will conclude this session. I'd like to thank you both very much for coming and for a very interesting discussion. Daniel Ågren and Victor Trotta. Thank you very much.
Thank you.